Hello friends, welcome to Pothos Sound, where we are all about growing our sound. My name is Andrew, and I am coming out of a pretty gnarly cold that I caught right after recording the last video in this series. So it's been a few days since I've opened up Kontakt and all that, but I've been itching to get back to it, and while I do have the sniffles a little bit still, definitely a little bit congested still, I'm ready to get after it here. So where we last left off, we had just set up all of our Kontakt stuff here. So we had creator tools set up, we got our script stuff set up, and we were ready to go with getting stuff imported to Kontakt. So what I'm going to do is jump over to my full screen here without me in the corner, and we'll begin putting some samples into Kontakt and finally getting this instrument set up with actual sounds. Before we get started though, I just want to sincerely thank you for watching. Truly, I appreciate your company. So, full disclosure, I have actually tried to record this part of the video several times today, and I figure fourth or fifth time's a charm. I've just been on dad duty. My poor son is getting over the same cold that I am, and my wife's been prepping food for Thanksgiving tomorrow and all that. But in any case, I am ready to jump into Kontakt again today. I've got a fresh brewed cup of peppermint tea. It's cold and rainy out. Let's do this thing. So last time we left off, we have basically gotten Kontakt set up with the peripheral applications, creator tools, and the Sublime Text KSP scripting stuff set up. And I'm finally ready to go ahead and pull in samples so that we can begin developing the actual UI itself, in addition to some of the behind the scenes scripting. And we'll have to do a little bit of scripting to help get the groups set up properly without having too much of a headache, but we'll get there in just a moment. Now, I've had to undo some of this stuff because, like I said, I tried to work on this a little bit earlier today and it just wasn't turning out quite right. But I think I've got this back to basically the sort of the init settings. Now, let me pull down the Finder window I have here. So it turns out I've got a bunch of stuff by this website, Ghosthack, and the one that we're working on is the Ultimate Vocal Library. So we're going to open this up. They've delivered the files in a dry setting as well as like with wet settings, which is basically just the dry with reverb on it. But we want the dry so that we can control our own reverb and delay settings. And they've got chants and phrases and a whole bunch of different things in here, which is really cool. We're going to focus on the word bank for now. And perhaps later on, once we finish this iteration of our instrument in Kontakt, we can add in some of the other stuff. But the words are the main thing, the main content that I'm concerned with for now. So let me select all of these samples. And with Kontakt, especially with this instrument, it's going to be really straightforward. We're just going to chromatically we're going to line them up chromatically, starting on C0. So we're going to pull these in, 72 samples, right there. So you'll notice that over here in the expert view, the zones, it doesn't start at 0 like it normally would because I've already imported these samples in and have had to delete them and all this. So the reason that these are numbered this way is because Kontakt has already seen zones in here from when I tried to record earlier. So this isn't going to matter too terribly much, but I just wanted to note that it's listing them this way because of the fact that I've already imported them and deleted them out. But that's okay. The group ID is still zero though for this first one, so that's still looking good. And there's a couple things that I want to get in place before we start duplicating the group and getting a few more things set up. So first of all, I want to go down to the modulation section here with the AHDSR and actually increase the release time to like 10 seconds or so. And this is to sort of fake a one-shot sample. So because we're doing all of these individual words, like none of these are going to be more than 3 or 4 seconds long, I just want to up the release time so that I don't have to hold down or sustain the note to play the whole word. So for example, I'll just click on a note here.
Girl, DMT.
So I'm just clicking the note and it's going through the entire sample because the release time is up so high. Again, it's sort of an okay way to do it, but again, that's what I'm doing for now. I also want to go ahead and remove the velocity modulation that controls the volume. So I do not want velocity to affect the playback volume of the sample. I just want all of the samples at the same volume no matter what the velocity is. So we're just going to delete that, and that's looking good. And let's see here. We need to change the source module from direct from disk to the Time Machine Pro. Now what this is going to let us do is change the tuning of the samples without affecting the speed of the sample, which is going to be critical when we have the layer 1 and the layer 2 thing going on, so that we can stack the different pitches. So this is the TM Pro is very important for this particular aspect. And I think that's about it. The only other thing we should probably do with the group is add our filters in, which, we might actually add those in the instrument buses. So I've already got this one set to bus 1. Let's go ahead and rename this group. This is going to be natural 1 for the natural playback, so it'll just be the sample as it is, and then we'll be creating some groups that are tempo synced to a particular tempo. We'll get to that in just a minute here. So let's duplicate this. This is going to be natural 2. So again, this is like our second layer. If you'll remember back to the UI sketch, this one will be controlled by the controls that are sort of on the right part of the screen. And I want to make sure that this group 2 here, natural 2, is routed to bus 2. So now when we play a note,
DMT.
if you notice right here, these little bus icons
Believe.
are both getting volume, which is perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and add filters to these. So the first is going to be a high pass, and I'm actually going to bypass this for now. And then for the second slot, we're going to do a low pass. Again, just sticking with the LP4, push the cutoff all the way up and bypass that. And we'll do the same thing with bus 2. And the reason I'm doing the buses is to make sure that when we add a few more groups here for the tempo sync stuff, that we have the same controls no matter which group are playing. So instead of putting them in the group level, we're going to put them at the bus level to give us that extra consistency and control. So here in the instrument insert effects, and actually, we might do this on the instrument main effects here. Let's go ahead and add our delay. We're going to be using the replica delay because this gives us all of the options that we want, such as ping pong, time, feedback. We've got our musical delay times here, which we'll be able to program with the scripting. And we can give this a listen.
Body. Cool.
Very cool. All right, so let's bypass that. And then we're going to add the reverb, which we're just going to use the standard Kontakt reverb. I'll go ahead and put it in hall mode. It doesn't totally matter right now, again, because we're going to just have it bypassed for the time being. But we can always double check that it is working, right?
Cool. Mag.
Definitely working. So let's see. At this point, I think we're about ready to create the tempo sync groups. So again, we've got a 1 and a 2, an A and a B for each of these. So we're going to have 6 groups total because I want 2 pairs of groups that are tempo synced, one to a slow tempo and then the other to the high tempo, so that when we put it into sync mode, Kontakt will be able to, we're going to script this manually, but we'll be able to tell Kontakt if the tempo is in this range, play back these particular groups, and if it's in this other range, play back these other groups, so that the time stretching doesn't get too extreme one way or the other. So let's do this. We're going to duplicate this one, and then we're going to name this tempo sync slow 1. And now what we have to do that we've created this tempo sync slow group. This is going to be the first of our 2 slow sync groups. So we have to make sure that we're in TM Pro, which we are. And then for speed, we're going to set this to zone. And then this is where we actually have to go into the wave editor and basically go through every single zone and create a grid here. Let me go through and play with this and see what I can come up with. And I'll be back with you here in just a moment. Okay, so this is actually a really good point. I haven't even gotten started on working on all these zones yet because when I hold down a note, you'll notice I've changed the start point for this sample, but we're also hearing the natural playback from our natural 1 and 2. So we're actually going to need to pull in Sublime Text for a moment and do some stuff with our on note here, just to help us get through this without hearing the groups that we don't want to hear. So in our script, this is in the on note callback. So I've got a whole bunch of these already set up. I'm actually going to tell it to disallow group, and then we're going to say all groups, so that when we trigger a note, none of the groups are going to play. And then just for now, we're going to say allow group, and the IDX we want is 2, because we're working with group ID number 2 right now to make these samples line up on a grid. So let's go back into Sublime Text. Let's hit Command K to compile, come back into Kontakt. And in the script editor, we should see this here. So on note, disallow all groups, allow group 2. So now when we play a note, we see that we're only hearing sound from group ID number 2. Perfect. So now I can actually go in here with the wave editor and trigger the notes on my physical keyboard and only hear the group that I'm trying to work with. Okay, just to show you guys what I'm doing, I'm about 2/3 of the way through. I've got my metronome at 85 beats per minute, which is where I have Kontakt. And basically, I'm going through and setting these to the point where they sound okay.
Eyes, mind, nobody play.
And you'll see that, like, when I turn the grid on, some of the tempos it comes up with is crazy. So I'm just setting it like 80
Play, play,
and trying to figure out where it should sit from here.
play, play,
Or maybe this should come down, right?
play, play.
That sounds about right to me.
Reality, reality.
Like with this one, I'm kind of hearing a 1E and, a 2E and type of rhythm.
Reality, reality,
So, yeah,
reality, sin.
there we go. So this is basically the process of, I've got my metronome, I'm going through, hitting the keys, lather, rinse, repeat. I think I just hit the last sample.
Everything, everything.
All right, cool. So that is all 70-something samples, all as synced as I can get them. Okay, so if we click through all of these samples, just kind of looking through, they all have a grid, they all have a tempo, and the plan is to basically duplicate this so that we'll have a tempo sync slow 1 and 2, and then a tempo sync fast 1 and 2. So let's do that real quick. Tempo sync slow 2. This will be like our layer 2 for this. And then we'll need to duplicate this one more time. And this is going to be tempo sync fast 1. And so basically what I'm going to do is for all of these samples, so again, they all now have a grid and a tempo, I'm basically going to just double the tempo that is on here. So for example, like with this very first one, it's 84.17. I'm going to double this 2, and I don't trust my math. So again, 84.17 times 2. I'll basically pop this in. So we'll double click this. Boom, just like that, so that it's like the time stretching won't be too extreme at a slow tempo, and if it's a faster tempo, like a drum and bass type track, the rhythms will sit in the pocket a little bit better than if they were just with the slow sync. I know I'm doing a horrible job at explaining this, but I hope that once we get this close to finished and into a DAW, this whole concept will perhaps make a little more sense if it doesn't already. I feel like I'm explaining it poorly, but let me know in the comments if you have a question about what I'm up to here. But I'm going to go through and double the tempo for all of these, and I'll meet you as soon as I'm done with that. Okay, so I just went through all of the samples again and doubled the tempo. So the tempo sync fast groups, the zones with the grid, the grids that are for the zones are set to double the tempo. So if we look at this very last sample, in the fast group, it's set to 184, and in the slow group, it's set to 92. So again, the main point behind this is that if we want to enable tempo syncing with the host tempo, like with Pro Tools or whatever, I want to make sure that the samples sound good at slow and fast tempos, or as good as they can. There's going to be some artifacts in there, but overall, I think it's good to have basically this type of thing going on here. So let me duplicate this group, and I'm going to save because that was a lot of work. It took like 45 minutes to go through and do all that. And we still have to make sure that these groups are being routed to the right place. Natural 1, 1, and 1. So these three should be going to bus 1. And we'll make sure that the two groups, the layer 2 groups, are going to bus 2. So that will make sure that no matter what, all of our groups, our layers 1 and 2, are going to go to the filters, which is what we want. And then everything, no matter what, is going to go to the reverb and replica delay. That took a lot longer than I thought it would. I'm saving again, just in case. I'm going to go ahead and call this a video because that took a lot. And next time, we will actually get to probably some UI stuff, putting the user interface together, and then finally getting into some more hardcore scripting stuff after that. So the video series continues. I know I've got a lot of editing to do to put this one together, but I hope you enjoyed. Please drop a like, subscribe for more Kontakt instruments building goodness. I will see you in the next one.